Hi, this is Dave with DK Cattle Company. Today I wanted to make a quick video talking about my favorite states to start a small cattle operation on. If you're looking to start a small cattle business, first generation, and you want to sell direct to consumer, these are kind of the states that I would really look into, especially if you're from maybe a state that wouldn't be ideal to do something like this and you are considering relocating. These are the states that I would really think about moving to. So kind of like getting into the criteria and what I would look for in a farm. It's going to be a place that I can graze a cow an acre. That's really important to me because as you get like into the western United States, for example, when you're talking 10 to 50 acres per animal unit, that adds up very quickly. So like, I mean, there's parts of every western state, Montana, Colorado, New Mexico, Idaho, Arizona, where you're at one animal unit for every 50 acres. Well, I have 10 cows. That would literally be 500 acres of land versus the versus 50 acres of land here. And in those states, that land is not priced accordingly to that. So you're talking, you're still going to pay, you know, $2,500 at the very least, but more like $3,000 to $4,000 an acre for that land that you might not even be able to graze, you know, a few cows on, let alone grow a whole herd. Another thing that I really consider outside of, you know, how much land you're going to need per cow is also what the market looks like. There's states like Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma a little bit, and Texas is a good example, parts of Texas, where it's great to raise cows there. You know, especially Missouri and Arkansas are very good examples of these kind of states. Great to raise cows there, but there's no people. You need a market to sell to. I mean, those states are great, and if you want to live, you have that more remote living situation, maybe not as rural, but you're getting more remote. Those are really good states, but finding a beef market in those states can be challenging. If you have family in those states, like if you're from those states and you can sell to family and friends and kind of grow word of mouth from there, that's a really good opportunity, you know. And you might say that might be the case like what you're saying, but in reality, you know, I'm able to do it, or, you know, whatever, or I know this person and stuff. I'm saying compared nationally, those states have a lot of cows to the amount of people that they have. So you are going to be in a more competitive environment with less people to buy your product. It's just a matter of fact. So that's a big thing, is having people to actually sell to. And then the biggest thing, in my opinion, as a first generation person that's had to buy everything along the way, is cost. There's a lot of states that would be great if the land was affordable, but it's not. We're not in an affordable era. It's not going to get cheaper. It's only going to go up. I really believe that. If it goes down, I'm going to buy more, but I don't think it's going down anytime soon. So those are kind of the things that I really consider. And then, so before we get into like the places that I like and would kind of think about moving to outside of where I live, which is Northeast Ohio, let's talk about where I live and why it's decent for what I'm doing. So first of all, Ohio as a whole has a ton of people. I don't know the population off the top of my head, but there's a bunch of people in Ohio. We have a million big cities, you know, Cleveland, Akron, Canton, Columbus, Dayton, Cincinnati, Toledo, Youngstown, Warren. I mean, that's like 10 larger cities that I can just kind of name off the top of my head. But ag is still pretty big in Ohio, and we have a good amount of farmland in Ohio, and land prices are still relatively cheap, especially here in Northeast Ohio and Southern Ohio. Western Ohio, completely out, complete garbage. Western Ohio is super expensive, and it kind of falls more into Indiana prices and competition than it does Ohio prices and competition. But Eastern Ohio, from north to south, is still pretty decent. You can still get a good deal there. Another good thing about where I live specifically in Northeast Ohio, is we have the worst winters for the entire state of Ohio. We have the most snowfall, it's the coldest, but then the flip side to that coin is in the hottest days in the summer, you can look at our temperature and what it is, like let's say it's 85. In Columbus, which is only 2 hours away, is gonna be 90, and in northern Kentucky, it's most likely going to be 92 to 95. So it's typically about 10 degrees cooler here than it is in, like, say, a Kentucky or West Virginia. Dude, all these cows are just rubbing on me hard today. So we have more mild summers than the rest of the state, and we have lake effect precipitation from Lake Erie, meaning that we get more snow in the wintertime, but that also means that we get very consistent rainfall in the summertime. Last year, how this plays out is last year, the whole state, Ellie, don't do that, please. The whole state experienced a pretty bad drought, severe in a lot of places, and that didn't touch us at all. We had a slow June. We only had like one rain event in June, but besides that, we didn't feel it at all. Our summer slump was just a little worse than it normally is, but no one was like losing crazy yields on corn and stuff like that. So it was all in all pretty good. Kind of a common theme with all these sort of places is there's no having your cake and eating it too. You're gonna sacrifice one for the other sort of thing and stuff like that. Like I was saying about, you know, it being cold in the wintertime, but kind of cooler in the summertime. And a lot of rainfall, but then a lot of snowfall. And then same thing with, like, maybe another state's cheaper, but it doesn't have as many people to find a market or build a market in. You know, there's always going to be drawbacks and give and takes wherever you go. These are just kind of the places that I think would be a good idea. I think, so starting out, I think where I live is pretty good. All of Eastern Ohio is a really good option. I think Western Pennsylvania can also be put in that boat. Western Pennsylvania has a very similar climate to where we're at. Land prices are still decently cheap. If you can get a good piece of land for $5,000 an acre or less, especially if you can get it $5,000 an acre and with a house or something like that, is a really good opportunity right now where the market's at and everything. And then as you go south, West Virginia and Kentucky are really good states, really good land prices. You just have to make sure, looking at properties in that kind of region of, you know, getting into the Appalachian Mountains and that more hilly country, that it's not a cliffed out turd. You have to make sure that you're gonna have usable pasture ground on that property, or you can create usable pasture ground. Where we live, it's flatter than flat. You really have to make sure you don't have too much moisture on your property over anything. Ohio, Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, northern West Virginia, northern Kentucky, basically that whole region is a really good place. I like that area a lot. Another area that I like a lot would be northern Michigan. Northern Michigan, you're gonna have severe winters. You're gonna have that to contend with, but what you lose in that, you have very reasonable land prices and you know, good consistent rainfall and pretty mild summers, you know, through the summer. So there is a trade-off to be had there in Michigan, but if you can afford, say, 200 acres, a 200-acre Michigan farm over a 100-acre Virginia farm, that Michigan farm, you'll do pretty well in that Michigan farm, because you should be able to graze almost just as long. Even though your land will go dormant sooner, you'll just have so much more grass that you should be able to graze pretty deep into the winter, especially if you teach those cows to graze through the snow and stuff. That would be kind of a fun experiment, is to compare like the same valued farm in Virginia to the same valued farm in Michigan and kind of see like where they'd be at. But I would not be afraid to trade a snowier place for more acres and good pasture ground in the summertime. So where land prices are at right now, northern Michigan is definitely one of the ones I really look at a lot. So as we go south, we're gonna skip over Tennessee, and we're gonna go down to like Alabama, Mississippi, parts of Louisiana. Those northern parts of those states I think are really good places to look into. Land prices aren't terrible, especially in Alabama. You can get some higher elevation stuff for Alabama. Obviously it's not gonna be like, you know, Colorado or something. So you can get like some 2,000 foot, you know, elevation stuff in Alabama where the weather's pretty mild, and the land prices aren't bad there. And you can find, there is markets to be had there. You just would have to travel further for, you know, farmers markets and stuff like that if you want to do more of that kind of selling. With any of those southern states though, I mean, you know, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, you're gonna have really hot summers with, you know, pretty severe humidity with that as well, which is kind of like the worst kind of heat. So something to really consider if you're going from a more northern state or a drier state. If you're going from like New Mexico or Arizona and you're like, oh, I deal with 100 all the time, 100 is way different in Georgia than it is in any of those states. So just something to be very cognitive of if you're going to a state like that. And from the animal's perspective, really make sure that you have the right type of cow and shade available to those animals in states like that if you're going to go more that route. Yeah, so kind of thinking about it, I can't really think of another state that I really like right now. I kind of like the Northeast. I kind of like Michigan and West Virginia and Kentucky, northern West Virginia and Kentucky. Those are really good values and everything. Kind of the state I would like if money was no object would probably be Virginia, more specifically Central Virginia to Western Virginia. You can run a crap ton of cows there. The dormant season is very short, so my goal would be to not feed a single bale of hay. I would just try to graze them year round. Would be a really cool thing to do. There's some good population centers between Virginia Beach area, you know, Hampton Roads area, Richmond and DC area. There's so many people in those three big areas that you can really you really have a strong market there if you're going to have to build a market. And the weather isn't terrible in the summer, especially if you can get in more western Virginia where you can get, you know, to 1,500, 2,000 feet elevation. Your most warm days in the summer aren't going to be terrible. So that's kind of like my money is no object place. Places that I would absolutely avoid would be really any state west of the Midwest. So like every state west of like that Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas line, besides Texas, especially if you have family in Texas, is a good state. And same thing with Oklahoma. But when you talk about like a Montana, North South Dakota, Idaho, Wyoming, Colorado, to any of those states, that block of states, even Oregon and Washington, the land prices are just too rich for the amount of production you can get out of those properties. So if you're coming at it as a first generation rancher and you have to pay for these things, you have to pay for the land, you have to pay for the cows that you're going to run on them, you have to pay for the hay in the wintertime, you're building an operation, you're not going to be able to do that as effectively in those states unless like that is your absolute goal and you have the money to spend. If you want to do that, if you want to do the Western thing, you know, that's cool. But when you're talking about places like that where you need, you know, 500 to 1,000 acres just to run a decent herd of cows, I mean, I'm talking, you know, 40, 50 head of cows, you're going to need a good chunk of land to run. That just isn't going to economically make sense for anyone unless you just have a whole bunch of money burning a hole through your pocket, and that's absolutely what you want to do. And that's, a lot of people are doing that in retirement. You're going to see a lot of those states are going to have a lot of retirees ranching in them. People that have worked their whole life in maybe corporate America, or, you know, have been very successful in a more office setting, and they're like, you know, in their 50s to 60s, and they want to go start a ranch somewhere. They're going to cash out their retirement accounts and start a ranch there, and more power to them, you know, do the more ranching thing, you know, horses and all that stuff. For me, I'm focused on running as many cows as I possibly can, as cheap as I can, and then having a place to sell them after I have them good and fat. So the way I'm looking at this is from that perspective, is how do we raise them as cheap as possible, considering the mortgage in that, and how do we sell them once they're raised? And that's why I like those places that I mentioned, is because you can raise them and there's a place to get rid of them when you're ready to sell them. So that's just kind of my opinion on that subject. I know a lot of people are looking to get into cows and kind of thinking about if they're going to stay where they're at or if they're going to go maybe try to find something somewhere else. Those are the places that I would start looking if I was considering a move, or if you're in one of those states, then, you know, maybe start looking around your local neighborhood and go from there. But thank you so much for watching the videos. The YouTube channel has really grown a lot. I really appreciate that. They're shedding super bad right now. I really appreciate that. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already, and like the videos. It really makes a big difference for how YouTube recommends the videos. If people that watch the videos like them, it recommends it to more people. Most of my views come from YouTube recommending the videos. So it's literally like a faucet rather, that YouTube turns on and off whenever they want. So like one video will get 1,000 views in a day, and then it'll get 40 views in 2 weeks after that. Like it's really weird. So the more likes I get on a video, and comments are very important too, the more it'll suggest it to more people, and the more the videos will actually get views. That being said though, the channel's only like 2.5 months old, and I already have 5 videos over 1,000 views. I have over 200 subscribers, and we have almost 15,000 views. We're closing in on 15,000 views total. So I'm very happy with the progress of the YouTube channel. I really appreciate the viewership, you guys watching the videos. I know it's a really small channel right now, but I'm trying to build it. I'm trying to you know, post more content and kind of get, you know, more stuff out there. So I really appreciate it. Have a good day. Bye.